So that's great, thank you. So let's talk about that regional market and regional cooperation. And from your standpoint in Nicosia, Theodoros, what you view, I mean, do you agree with what you've heard? And if so, what do you think the outlook is for kind of getting the key players in the region to come together and find outlets for the gas in Israel's waters and Cyprus's waters?
Well, obviously, it's a difficult question because you have to answer it without having some basic information analysis about it. The first one is that as far as Cyprus is concerned, and even as Israel is concerned, we're still having a dynamic understanding of resources. We don't know how much is available. In Cyprus, over the next few months, we're going to be able to have commercial declaration, most probably, of the first reserve we have, which by itself is nowhere near what is necessary to have a 2 trains LNG in terms of volumes of gas, because you have to start from there. That's the basic sine qua non. You have to start to have enough volumes, at least 10 TCF, to build a 2-train LNG, because a 1-train LNG doesn't really make money, it costs you money. You make the money built on economies of scale, which you would get from the 2nd or the 3rd LNG. So even for Israel, Israel has enough gas, more than enough gas. Actually, it's less than. It's about 400 billion cubic meters. It's 20% per year. And most of it, it's 20 BCM. Yes. And I think that most of that is going to go to the regional markets. The problem is that any way you look at it, it has a lot of political hurdles and political impediments on the route. And what is a political problem for some country might be a political opportunity for another, unfortunately, unless we create a framework of cooperation. Now, this framework of cooperation is being pushed, it's being created by itself in the region by what Israel, Egypt, and Greece and Cyprus perceive as, to put it mildly, less than friendly Turkish posturing and Turkish position throughout the region. So, in my opinion, in an ideal environment, Turkey should participate in that. But the big precondition for that is to help to really resolve the Cypriot problem. What is actually happening in the region and within our exclusive economic zone is that we have a copy-paste incident from a gunboat diplomacy of the 19th century, where you have conflicting aspects and opinions on that case. Some of them are completely irrational. If you can allow to show a map, I would show you that Turkey, for example, is trying to claim continental shelf rights for a state which does not exist, the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, that even if it existed, does not have a coastline to the south. Even if there is a resolution of the Cypriot question, and if in any unrealistic environment you have another state, an independent state, that state would still have no access to the southern part of the waters. So Turkey is actually claiming to protect their rights in a continental shelf of a potential state which she only recognizes, but does not have a coast from which, as you very well know, you need to have territorial waters and that need to have an exclusive economic zone or a continental shelf. So, unfortunately, as the situation becomes clearer in terms of reserves, it also becomes more complex in terms of political risk. And the political risk needs to be taken into consideration, as it has been, of course, very well documented throughout these discussions. But as we see it, the best option, of course, would be a first phase, as the companies are phasing it, based on gas pipelines to the south. Here, Cyprus and Israel have common interests. Cypriot gas is more politically digestible, if we could use this term. Both if you could eat it, of course, but you use it to cook, so in some cases it could be digestible. It could be more politically digestible in Egypt and also to Jordan. So basically Cypriot gas, even though it's far less significant than the volumes of Israeli gases, could open the way in that market. And this is what we're actually discussing with the National Oil Company of Cyprus, Noble, and Delek vis-a-vis Egypt. So I think that if you want to find my best guess for first gas would be to Egypt. Second issue would be Jordan. Jordan, it's much better experience on how politically digestible an Israeli gas and acceptable will be to Jordan, but I think it's the most economically sufficient way to do it. It's very low cost. So in terms of business-wise, that's your first option. That's your first option to go. It's easier, it's cheaper, and the political risk, I think, it's more manageable compared to Egypt. And if there is something that Cyprus could do to assist in that, most certainly it will do so. So we are creating a regional environment of cooperation which should include Turkey. Unfortunately, it does not because of its own behavior. It's not because Cyprus has a huge military power or diplomatic ability to coerce everyone else to exclude Turkey. Israel and Egypt are excluding Turkey, not Cyprus. Cyprus has its own problems with Turkey as well as Greece, and it has had that for decades. The issue is the perception of change of the policy, Turkish policy, both in Egypt and in Israel, which is creating this framework. Now, this is the beginning. If we find a way to consolidate this cooperation through gas, through this gas trade, that would increase and consolidate it. That shouldn't exclude anyone in the long term. I can also speak in my Greek capacity, Greek metropolitan, if you like, capacity. But, you know, when Greece is coming to the region, is reappearing slowly but steadily as an actor, it's not doing it in an aggressive posturing. It's doing it in order to create added value, to lessen the political risk so that everybody could benefit. And we have to recognize that the first beneficiaries are going to be the countries and the region itself. Now, if you ask me about a pipeline to Greece, I think this is one of the most how can I put it diplomatically, the most unrealistic projects ever proposed. And it is the most unrealistic project ever proposed because even if you build this Nobel Prize winning engineering-wise pipeline across Crete all the way to central Greece, you still have no pipeline network to get it to Italy or to Central Europe. By the way, the same problem is with all pipelines which would go through Turkey. Do not fool yourselves to believe that there is enough pipeline capacity in Turkey. They have to build a dedicated pipeline for that. And even if they do, once you get it to the Turkish-European border, how are you going to export it to Europe? There is no pipeline. You have to build it from scratch. So these are options which really, I think, further enhance the original argument that regional markets are first. Regional markets in Europe by pipeline are a distant third. And we have to figure out the economics and the volumes before we can discuss seriously an LNG. But if we do an LNG, it would be better to do it one LNG, a combined LNG.
So, sorry, let me just make sure I understood what you said, because you said the focus on Egypt, Jordan, because the broader decades-old Greece, Turkey, Cyprus conflict is going to make it too difficult to bring infrastructure in. No,
I said that we start with the least politically risky option. Mm-hmm. And the one who is creating the political risk currently is Turkey. It's not Cyprus. That's what I'm saying. So in the longer term, you start from where most of your allies are and where the political risk is less. This is what I'm saying.
Okay.
We don't have the reserves for anything else right now anyway.